Hello, friends. This is American writer and historian Dr. Jack Dempsey. Today is Wednesday, May 14th, 2025, and I have the privilege and pleasure of being here with my good friend and a great poet, Ms. Nina Olff, who lives in Brookline, Massachusetts. She's just published a book, a collection of poems called Ghost Dances, very significant title. And to me, this is a significant poet. So we're going to hear some of Nina's work today. We're going to talk about the backgrounds of it, the thoughts behind it, and between the lines. And she's going to read a couple for us as well. And I really think you'll enjoy getting to know this remarkable mind behind her poetry. So, Nina, hello, how are you?
Hi, good to be here.
Good. I thought for efficiency's sake, I'd share the biography that is put together at the front of your volume. And you can talk about any aspect of, well, of your life, and we'll be coming back to different aspects of that as we go, okay? Here are some of the
Sure.
basics
Yeah.
about Nina. Born in Manhattan, Nina Lydia Olff grew up in Brooklyn's Brownsville during the 1960s, traveling often between New York City and the family farm in upstate New York. And she wrote her first poem at age 8. We want to hear about that. She has published poems in books and journals and a book of poetry called American Heritage, Many Tribes, Many Nations, published in 2016 by Sea Venture Press. And there'll be a link to that book in the information here below. Nina's influences include Black Rodeo, Native American powwows. Her teachers have included the Mohawk Skywalkers, who hung out with her dad, and her Jewish mother, who was active in civil rights. Nina's grandfather from Suriname and married to her Black Indian grandmother was a strong influence on the family farm, as was her New York City Jewish Bohemian grandmother. Living in Massachusetts for the past 25 years, Nina is also a multi-ethnic visual artist, researcher, curriculum advisor, and educator who enjoys her time with her grandson. So, what do you think of that, Nina? And what is the most important thing? What are the most important things you'd like to talk about in terms of what's made you the poet that you are?
Well, first of all, I can tell you that I was a chatterbox at a very young age. And my mother she had me when she was 21. And my mother's brilliant, a brilliant, dynamic thinker. And she read poetry, she danced, she was totally inspiring and dynamic, even as a young child. That's just my mom. And then there's my dad and all my relatives and my grandma Rose, who read 10 books a week, even though she never graduated high school, became a nurse at the age of 45, lied about her age. I was just surrounded by poor but cultural, culturally aware people from many cultures. And the richness and the ability to see across boundaries or see things that are invisible, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the intellectual curiosity runs deep in my family. And so poverty is boredom in a way, like not having something to read or learn. For everyone in my family. Um, it's no surprise that I am who I am. I mean, with the kind of exposure to so many different things. What I wanted to say was when you were reading my biography, now that I just turned 70 and I'm working on a memoir for my daughter, so she knows she understands me. Um, I'm very much preoccupied, not so much with writing now, but just with all the horrors of the world and how this planet has not been taken care of. That's my preoccupation. I have a grandson. He lives in New Mexico. I see him twice a year. It's not enough. And I'm so worried about him and my daughter and all the children all over the world. Any child that I see, no matter where they're from, what color their skin, my empathy is so strong that it pains me to see a child hurt or in danger. I would say that's my um, strength and weakness because it kills me. It takes a lot away from me. But it works as an artist, not good as
Yeah.
But
And
it's draining.
going by what we see on the global news, I mean, every city of the United States and many cities around the world are filled with millions of people who are out on the streets for exactly the concerns you just named. And it seems like
Right.
people have so they feel they have so little power, so little voice. Maybe, like you said earlier, a national strike would begin to hit the pocketbooks of the rich and have them
Yeah.
realize with a snapback that, hey, the working people are the ones really that have the power. So
And who've done the work.
I imagine that this kind of activism, there's a crossroads between activism and art these days. And I think
Yeah.
your work falls under that rubric too. You're not just speaking pretty language, you're trying to sink your teeth into the things that affect our living and the things that could raise our living to a new level. But we need this change of consciousness. So I just want to say up front that anybody who reads your book, it's called again Ghost Dances, and there'll be information how you can get a copy right here with more information. Anybody who reads that is going to come awake more because we
Hmm.
live, as we're going to find out many different ways from your work today, Nina. We live in so many different dimensions that we are encouraged and browbeaten and even rewarded to ignore and look at
Yeah.
what it costs us. So let me ask you first, a lot of people know what ghost dances were. This is around the 1890s in the Western United States, where numerous tribes affiliated together on the edge of then extinction at the
Yeah.
hands of the US government to dance, to sing, to cry out to their ancestors to help us, guide us, help us find the way back to the world that we
Bring
love
back a better
and we
world. Bring
knew.
back the world. Right. Bring
So,
back the world the way it was,
so
before.
what is your thinking behind selecting that title? I noticed in the book you said, I'm not trying to appropriate this Native American
Yeah.
cultural form, but rather they were desperate to save their world. And that
Right.
gives you
Right.
a direct historical linkage to that movement. Talk about that title, if you would.
Okay, I want to say a few things first. I
Sure.
come from a family of activists. When I was a child, I was very active up until probably my 20s. I no longer consider myself an activist, and I'm very ill. I have chronic fatigue, kidney disease. I have a whole host of things that keep me in this room. So I consider myself more a humanitarian, an artist. I don't ask who made this world. I just ask why aren't people taking care of it? Those are that's what I think about the earth and how it's being destroyed, how life is being destroyed. And I very much believe that, and from things that I've read, that there was a time when there was matrilineal societies, and the goddess and the garden were central to life. There were life affirming societies at different points over the past, whatever, 200,000 years. So, having said that, I wanted to just clarify how I see the world and how what my contribution might be.
So,
Um,
what is it about, let's say in our imaginations, a poet like yourself
mhm.
doing, performing a ghost dance? What is that doing for you?
Well, it's the idea. I mean, I visualize, well, mostly native, Plains Indians and native peoples from the Northeast,
Yep.
dancing continuously as long as they can possibly stand on their feet to in a circle to celebrate what is good about life and to try to restore the old ways. And this is in terms of Native American culture before European settlers decimated the land and the people and continue to do so. I'm not saying Europeans, but just the people in control, the leaders, whatever, are continuing worldwide to destroy the earth. So to me, the ghost dance represents both a celebration and a cry and a gathering to call back the garden, to call us back to the garden. That's how I see it. I mean, I understand it in terms of Native American culture, but I see it as as a worldwide cry, call, celebration, a pleading, a wish for the beautiful nature of that was here,
Yep.
that's being
And
destroyed by,
it,
yeah,
you know, it's come out of my own work as an historian. It dawned on me, having studied both Native American and ancient Minoan culture, another matriculture that so few people know about. But if they want to get well, if we want to heal ourselves historically, we need to know about them. But
right,
it came to me that, well, everybody on the biblical side of tradition is looking for the garden. They're always, well, where is the Garden of Eden?
right,
How do we get
right,
back there? What did we do wrong? And all this stuff. Well, you know what? The garden is remembering that we're in
right,
it. We're
right.
already in it. It's a question of
Yep.
our consciousness, which is so out of skill with the earth, with nature,
When,
with our own spirits, with our ancestors. We've got to get
yes,
a higher level of consciousness to remember that we're in it, and then we'll know how to behave.
I'm not very familiar with the text of the Western Bibles, but one thing that I read that stays with me that is absolutely, it just really racks my brain is man shall have dominion over the earth. Uh-uh. Man or woman should be caretakers of the earth, not dominion over. That whole notion to me is horrific because that's what we've got now.
And you know, when you finish reading that line in the Torah, in the first couple of books of the Bible, the
Yeah.
continuation of that line is, and you shall be the terror of all creatures on earth. You
Right.
will be the terror. It uses that word
Yeah,
of
I
all
didn't know
living
that.
things
That
around you,
that
the
makes it even
invincible
worse.
master.
Ugh, boy, as my grandma would say.
Yeah, so we need
Yeah.
our spirituality back. And according
Yes.
to many people, and I agree with them, Native American awareness is giving us a whole inheritance, a whole heritage by which we can steer our way back to the center of our souls and start to have our bodies live the values that our souls hold. You can't say one
I
thing
have a
with your mouth and then do something else each day with your body. That is not going to end well.
I want to share a quick little story. I was in junior high school in Brownsville, and which was rough in the 60s. And I had a science teacher, Mr. Goodman, who he was way ahead of his time. As straight looking as he was, he talked about Mars once having water, the ice caps, and that at some point in the future we'll have to eat insects because there'll be protein. And he used to volunteer me to like eat a dried grasshopper or whatever. But he wrote in my yearbook, to the one and only Cape Crusader, I really had a red cape, fighting always against the onslaught of autocratic teachers. A girl with so much on the ball and so little to show for it. I'm really going to miss you, Stuart Goodman. And he was like a visionary. And I wrote a story after that about the world having less oxygen, a short story, and leaders in the United States looking for Native Americans who knew how to live with nature. So from that whole experience, I turned it into a short story when I was like 13 or 12. Anyway,
Yeah.
I just thought that's very much a part of my life. Yeah.
Well, Nina, I also want to talk about the artistic aspect. We've talked about the historical, the personal a little bit, but also we need to talk about the artistic aspect, the aesthetic behind
Mm-hmm.
your poems. What are the principles of reality that you have been able to hold on to long enough to get these beautiful utterances out? So why don't we ask you to read a poem and we'll
Okay.
go further into how you write, what's going
Okay.
on while you write, and so forth. Why don't you share one with us?
Okay. This is a short one, and it follows what we've been speaking about. We live in a spirit world. So I'm going to read it. The
Okay.
heart organ, the heart organ is for listening to the landscape. Frequencies carry experience in the natural world. The humming is endless geometric angles between our ancestors and our cousins. We visit and reconcile. This is a plane that moves in all directions through time and space. That's the short poem that sort of encapsulates the way I see the world. It's like art and science and spirituality.
Yes, and time is of no object either in your
Oh,
poetry. You could be talking
right.
about one thing and then suddenly in a kind of oblique way, another voice will enter into that conversation as if you're walking down the street with a stream of words flowing through your mind, and then all of a sudden something touches you. One of your ancestors, one of your ancient family, a friend that talked to you last week. We all have this kind of mentality that is made up of so
Yeah.
many different crossing flows of language and memory and ambition and hope. And your poems capture that in this geometry of
Yeah.
presences in your mind. I would almost dare say that's what makes you a poet. And
Yes,
it's no
it's
easy
true.
task.
Yeah.
It's no easy
No.
task to be a poet in America. Henry Miller, in his book, the memoir, The Air Conditioned Nightmare, he said, all
Mhm.
the serious artists I know live like ex-cons.
Yeah, they're poor.
Yeah.
Poor.
And because they're
Because,
not going
yeah,
after the big money, they're doing
yeah.
something else with their time and their
Well, I
spirit.
could never do that. I always cared more about people and had yeah, I that wasn't me. So what I wanted to tell you was I I don't know, language, music, um early on when I was a kid, I mean, I someone gave me a book of Alexander, no, not Alexander, well, Alexander Pope, but Edgar Allan Poe, and it was so musical. I memorized The Raven and then the Bells when I was a young teenager, because I don't know, it was melodious, and my family, my black relatives were into jazz, and there was blues, and there was all kinds of music. My mother folk dancing, and she even played belly dance music. It was just, a big world of sound. And so adding words, the early poets like Yeats, Alexander Pope, uh, I read a lot of poetry early on. And it just moved me in a way that I wrote. Like I said, I wrote my first poem when I was in second grade that I actually wrote, but I had already heard out Edgar Allan Poe, for
Yep.
example. These are the
And
early influences. Yeah.
yeah, and some of the critics along the ages of American literary criticism, well, they've been less than in love with Edgar Allan Poe because they used to call him the Jingle Man, meaning that he used rhyme a lot to hold his poems together. But I think they overlook the rhythms of his poetry that you were just touching on. In other words, there's a kind of a incantation. He's casting a
Hmm.
magical spell around your
Yes.
imagination with just the rhythms, just with the rhythms of his verses. And they're like nobody else's of the time. His contemporary Walt Whitman was again trying to break down that old iambic pentameter of da 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 da
Hmm.
da da, and they were trying to find new rhythms for American experience. And you're right in the heart of that tradition.
But what I want to tell you about why Poe's work is still ringing in my ears is because number one, it's music, and music gets in really deep. And as medical science is working with Alzheimer's patients, if they play music from their high school days or their early days, people
Yeah,
remember things and come to life.
yeah,
So the rhyming and the meter um, were part of, oh, and also advertising, jingles, the horrible, stupid jingles that we hear, we still remember them.
yeah,
So they get in. So there's a way that it's not just there's content and then there's music. So the two things together have a really strong impact,
yeah,
especially when it's meaningful. Not like, let hurts put you in the driver's seat. I still hear that from when I was 11.
sure.
It stays in your brain. I loved a lot of lots of poets, like too numerous to name. There's probably like 50 poets that influenced me early on, and I always look for poets. The most recent two poets are my good friend Magdalena Gomez. She's fabulous, especially if you get to hear her live. And then Ocean, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Ocean Vuong or Vuong, he's Vietnamese. His poetry is it's my latest love. Just had to put that in. There's a long, long list of poets, so
Okay.
um,
Why don't you read
excited
another
about.
poem and then we'll talk more theoretically about what's going on there and take it nice
Okay.
and slow. Let us hear and savor every word, Nina.
Yeah, I tend to read too fast. Okay.
We all do.
This this poem is titled "We Are Each Other." Again, it's me. Okay. We are each other, made from the light of others, when they pass by as night birds, filled with whispers from another time. I hear my friends and family speaking, even though they have passed. Their voices grow louder when the black night is drawn over the vertical world. They float in and out of houses and walk among us. My heart calls them from the purple rivers of their remains. Arms are folded across the chest, locked into a new color. Receptors catch reflections with a multiplicity of eyes that see the invisible threads, like silken spiderwebs that pass through worlds, magnifying sentience. Crystals fold time. Since birth, I heard voices that lodged in the spinal fluid. We need to cast spells to rid our world of lethal dreams linking pleasure with bloodlust. Biblical patriarchy is conquest, bringing us closer to a deadly future as we remain unchanged for over 200,000 years. We become androids. Our learning is subdued. Our women are silenced by war-named gonads, harnessed by a psychotic framework. Where are we going in this bramble of berries? Bushes with thorns, wounds like hail piercing the skin. I sleep in their ground. My bed is made. That's the end of that one.
Wow.
I, I can't even talk about it. I mean, the words, I use words in a way that words can't be used, or prose can't won't do it, express it.
It's
Um,
always struck me that way. It's like talking about wine. You come up with these adjectives for wine and you can't
right,
help but
right,
sound like a pompous ass, right? But
right, right.
when you're talking about poetry, it's a different conundrum because you work so hard to cook all the language down in your head and heart into that crystalline, perfect expression. And then somebody says, "So what's this about?" And now you've got
Right,
to find out a whole new set of words to describe what it is
right.
you're talking about. But I think that so beautifully captures the multidimensionality of our minds and why we should cut off the vast majority of the voices, many of them wise, many of them healthy and helpful, even though they're not with us in the physical sense. What a terrible crippling of the human psyche. And your poems, it seems to me, because I've read all of them several times, they open up these dimensions again. And when you put the book down, you ask yourself, now where, let me just sit and listen. And who's speaking to me now? What does it mean? And there are bad influences too from the past, as you also said, that
Mhm.
have us by the short hairs right now. And we've got to have a new consciousness to enable the changes that we need.
While he was speaking, describing my your response and my poetry or the process, I was thinking that one of the images that I always see or sometimes see is holding a lantern and going back in time
Mm.
and looking back in time. And I get most excited learning about Paleolithic times or before that, and my brother and I, we both are so sad that the library at Alexandria was destroyed. We want to know what was in that,
Yeah.
so it's like seeing in the past, and you can see the past um, once you understand the present. Like people haven't changed, the same tactics get used. Um, I don't know. There's ways of seeing that are nourishing.
and interpenetrating with ours all the time.
Yes.
And in a
Yes.
sense, like that's how it should be. That's part of
Hmm.
nature. You know, the scholars
Yes.
always tell us, oh, you need to be objective and don't be presentist about things. You can't look at the world now the way it used to be then and don't
That's
confuse the two and all that.
that's
But
truncated thinking. Yeah.
right, but what they throw out is hindsight. Nature
Right.
gave us a gift called hindsight, and that
Right.
is our mechanism by which we learn from the past. If we can't learn anything, then all we have is dead museum pieces. And your work is not
Yes.
interested in that.
No, but I am interested in nature and human beings and human cultures from the past and possibilities that exist. Um, I had a thought, but maybe it'll come back to me about how this. Anyway, let's go on. I can't recapture what I just. Maybe it'll come back.
Okay, I have something prepared that I think will stimulate you. This is a passage at my website, ancientlights.org. I created what, as far as I know, the first vetted biography of the great poet and activist and historian Barbara Moore, M-O-R. She's
I love her work.
the co-author of The Great Cosmic Mother, a book that has 30 years now of people just saying, oh my God, there is so much I didn't know. There is so much that knowing it helps me to recover my real self and to know that the good guys, I'm on the side of the good guys. We have the majority. We are the good human beings that are being led astray by not so good ones. But so Barbara was talking in an interview about her aesthetic, her style of writing, and the philosophy and thinking and living that are behind it. So bear with me for 1 minute, and I'm going to share a quote from her that reminds me of you and your work all the time. And we'll see what you have to say. It just knocks me over every time I hear it. She says, the whole world around us is a theater, a work of art. I see the wounds of the earth, but for me, they are also poems and mirrors where we are living within this allegorical theater. My mysticism is the consciousness of matter, that we live within a conscious body. Mystic communion means a communion within this body of oneself, of the earth, atmosphere, and things, of the universe of quarks and fields. Within this mystic body, all things are in symbolic communication with each other. Everything makes symbolic statements to and about everything else. Tigers, snow tigers, giraffes, leopards. She used to go to the zoo with her mom when she was a little girl. They were so aesthetically overwhelming and satisfying. The sensation of the living, pulsing power of the world, totally within the context of being within a body. Under a microscope, a stained potato was a Gothic window. It was aesthetically pleasing and gorgeous at every level. If I get an aesthetic hit, I don't make a distinction at that point between aesthetic and mystical. It's so gorgeous, meaning something there is an artist long before me in the first cell. So this Barbara summed up as, quote, the media of Earth's evolving and continuous lust to make art. Matter, she says, is a superb artist, and that implies something about the conscious body we're involved in. If her one word for this was animism, perhaps she was after a poetry giving unruly body to the pulsing conversation between world, body, spirit, and world. And the form she found became a constant, significant jazz of slippage among many domains of consciousness. None of it meant to be limited by time, identity, or trivial convention. That's you for me.
Thank you. I love her book. I've got it after you either recommended it. I love her book, and that you think that I'm like her is the best compliment you could pay me because I just it's like it's ecstasy reading her work. It's a
That's the
form of
word.
spiritual ecstasy reading her work. I guess
That's
what
the
other
word.
people
And
feel,
the
but
word
for me,
ecstasy means standing outside of yourself.
Yes.
moving
Yes.
past your identity into communion with something far more alive, far more changing, far more
Yes.
significant, what she calls a constant significant jazz of slippage among
Yes.
domains of consciousness.
It
That's,
reminds
that's
me of
where we
what
are. That's where we are.
Joni Mitchell's line, we are stardust, we are golden. We are all stardust. Just like a TV show that was broadcast in the 50s is going out in space. The, it's the waves are there. If you sit next to someone, you cells do rub off. You do rub off on each other. You exchange cells. Um, so there's like you can put it in terms of science or what is known so far, but there's also when I write poetry, I feel a kind of ecstasy. It's like I'm going where I haven't gone before, and I just let everything come. And so that ability is both, it's a gift and it's a curse because I don't have boundaries. I don't have borders, so I feel things too much, perhaps. But it's also magnificent in that I can feel ecstasy when I put words together in a way that I see, there's a lantern in front of me.
That's what I feel as a writer too, is that the effort, you sit down at that desk, you've
Yeah.
prepared all you can, and now it's time to touch your pen to the paper, and it draws your whole spectrum of existence into a focused point, and you're trying to string that experience along and stay focused on what it is speaking to you and to find the right words, the right music, the right rhythm for that.
It's
And
almost like an out of body experience, yet my
yeah,
body, it's ecstasy. It's a spiritual ecstasy when you see new things.
yeah, and what she called the Earth's evolving and continuous lust to make art is working right
Yeah.
through us,
Yes.
because
Yes.
these moments where we want to write or paint or make music or get it down somehow, it
Yeah.
becomes art, and
Yeah, where we have to.
that is a natural energy that is turning into communication, exactly
Yeah.
like what she says.
Mhm. Yeah, I recommend reading her book. It's fabulous.
Yeah, it's,
One of the
again,
best
be
books
it
I've ever
Barbara
read.
Barbara
Oh
M
my
O
God.
R Moore, The Great
Yeah.
Cosmic Mother. Look it up at Amazon and you will see just dozens of pages of people who are
Fabulous.
grateful for that book in 5,200 different ways, you know?
Yeah, and
Now,
you can also get
Nina,
it cheaper.
your life as a poet began at age 8, your
Yeah.
biography says. So what was that
Yeah.
very first poem about? Why did you suddenly at
Oh,
age 8 spill,
I can recite
why
it.
did you spill over into actually writing it
I have
down?
I have no idea, but I could recite it to you now. But you have to
Okay,
remember, I was 8 years in second grade, so
we'll take that into account.
here it is. Flowers in the garden making up their way, with orange lilies and golden leaves on such a lovely day, with pink bright buds and laughing trees and whistling faces in the breeze. There's never been a song at night where flowers did not fall, for all the time and all day long they build a golden wall.
Wow. And did you try to publish that somewhere?
No, I just have it as part of my I started, that was my first poem, then I wrote another poem, and I wrote another poem. I wasn't like I sit down and I'm a poet all the time. I was, into music, dance. I had lots of friends. I was busy with so many things. I love taking care of my baby sister and brother. And that's always been true. I'm like, yes, I've always been a poet. I've always been an artist, but I was also a teacher, a researcher, a mother, not sitting at my desk all the time.
Yeah.
I've started a screenplay and a play. I want to finish it. I need a writers group. I've started many things, but I'm not someone who sits down to write every day in a kind of like formal way.
Yes.
I have too many interests, and um, Yeah, that's always been true. Like when I went to college, I said, I'm not going to get an MA or uh, degree for writing. I already know how to do that. I'm not rich. I can't live on that. Let me
Yeah.
get it something I can use, you know? So I got a master's of education. I intended to go on and design some kind of art and science doctoral program, but I got sick, so that didn't happen. Um, so I'm not like that kind of a writer who sits down every day and must write, although I'm always writing something,
Yes.
whether it's a laundry list or
Well, my
but
impression is
I'm
that
always
you're writing in your head every minute of the day.
sort of.
You're searching for language and for apprehensions of language that will someday hit the paper all the
Like I
time.
stop when there's a word I don't know or I don't know how to pronounce it, I stop and try to find out what it is. The other thing is I talk in many different voices. Having, my Jewish grandma speak a little Yiddish mixed in with her. She was from Maine, so we always thought she has a weird accent being from New York. And then, my grandfather had an accent, but my black family didn't speak black. They could speak black English, but they didn't. They, they spoke like you and me. But I grew up around a lot of black people, Puerto Rican people, all kinds of people,
Yeah.
uh, Arabs, people, everybody, Italians. And so I used to do imitations of people for my family. And when I was a bartender in Manhattan in my 20s, I used to call up a radio station, WPIX, and I would pretend this is before Whoopi Goldberg was famous, and I would be Sabrina the maid calling from a rich white family in Rockville Center at night. It got to the point where my boss used to say, "Go make the call, I'll cover the bar." And so those are the kind of theatrics that I still do. I still make up voices and record them or not record them. But I don't do anything professionally with that. It's just an aspect of who I am.
And when you live in an environment that has so many different veins of culture and tradition feeding into it, and everybody's English is a little bit different, you start to
Yeah.
realize at a very early age how plastic language is. And in one group, they might say, oh, that's not the right way to say it in English. But it was as doubly effective as what normal English could say.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the poets they pick up on no, don't give me formality, don't give me grammatical correctness necessarily, but give me
Hmm.
rather what I hear in my ear and my heart about what is the most effective phrasing to use. Not the grammar,
Sometimes,
not the
right.
grammar, the
No,
improvisation and the creative use of language to capture some aspect of reality.
I was learning French as a young person, which was a mistake. I should have studied Spanish. But anyway, you can't say I am hungry. You're not hungry. You have hunger in French.
Yes.
And in Yiddish, the translation would be to the store you're going, or how goes it you? That's German. There's all, um, different languages have different grammatical structures and
Yeah.
ways of seeing thinking, just like language frames thought. But also, when I've noticed when people come to the United States where English is not their first language and they're struggling, sometimes what they say is so poetic with grammatical errors. It
Right.
comes out being more interesting to my ear. Um,
And
as
that shows across all your pages, Nina.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I was in Scotland, I loved Scottish accents. When I was in China, I was amazed at how many young people, there were more English speakers not that they spoke with the correct intonation, but there were more English speakers in China than there were in the United States. I mean, so language is so important to me in a way, not as a qualifier, not as a determinant factor, but as an enriching source, all different forms. And like that, English is mostly about nouns, Hebrew is verbs. I love Shakespeare, even I love Shakespeare. And think that the language was so beautiful back then when I think American language, even the way I speak, has lost its beauty. When I listen to Southerners, despite the Klan, the racism, whatever, I love listening to people from North Carolina or Tennessee, or there's a like a song to their language, a singing, or people
Sure.
from Ireland, they're singing when they talk.
Yes.
And I think that American English at this point is without song.
Yeah. Now, Nina, let me ask you to do something. Look among your printouts there of the volume and pick one more poem to share with us while I tell people how they can get a copy. Okay?
Okay, hang on, I have to grab it because I didn't print out the whole thing.
Okay.
Hang on
Ladies
one
and gentlemen,
second.
if you want a copy of this book, it's called Ghost Dances by Nina Olff. You can contact Nina at her email. It's in the information below with this video. And her email address, as you'll see, is ninaolff@gmail.com. NINAOLFF at gmail.com. Nina Olff, OLFF, at gmail.com. And she will ask you for perhaps $10 for an original first edition copy of this marvelous work, which I confidently think is going to knock your socks off. You just don't run across a poet like this every day. And that's why I wanted to get involved with Nina's publication of this work. So, Nina, you have something to
Okay,
close
I
out our
have another
program with?
poem. I have other poems that I would like to read, but they're long and I can't always pronounce the the names correctly, and I don't want to mess them up. So I'm going to choose this poem,
Okay.
which is I am not at home in this world. I will fly away as a quetzal or a thunderbird, leaving no ashes and no headstone. My kin will see me in starlight if the sky is not fully blanketed by layers of clouds. I must leave and go with the many who died for no good reason. The world has become flat, like Dolly's clock, hanging over on one side. This is Dolly's clock, where it bends like a rubber egg over the side of a plate. These are end times for sitting pretty. Forget the dress, the tux, and the gold. Get into your safe room or bunker, filled with artificial light and food made from the toxins discovered and left from World War II. Your butterflies are pinned under glass, samples of feathers and petals stuffed into a cup, arranged in alphabetical order for reference. I'm sorry, but I see black. Heaven does not exist. The Milky Way is the afterlife, as before birth. I chose that because it's short. It's sort of similar to the others in character that I read, but I hesitate to read some of my longer, more beautiful, in a sense, visually beautiful poems because I don't think I'm up to it right now and I can mispronounce things. I just don't want to do that.
Well, that statement right there will, I think, encourage people to say, I got to get a copy of this. I've got to see even more from a poet who writes like that. And, there's a part, I think, of all of us that feels that we don't belong here, or at least that we are going to be moving on. And it was really significant to me that you chose the image of the Milky Way, the great galaxy with its nebula up in our sky when you can see it, because in early native New England, that was the river of eternity. That was the great river of souls where all your ancestors had risen to take up residence, as it were, in that great turning, moving, shining river and stream of light. And
That was true for Mayans as well. The Great Leap was to the Milky Way, many cultures before
yes,
the Ice Age
oh yeah,
and after.
for
Yeah.
sure, for sure.
I
Well,
just wanted to show you my
yes,
this is the book that I mean I was published in a lot of places, but this was my first book where it's just my poetry. I think you mentioned it before earlier,
yes, and
but
it'll be. I'll have a link to it and more info there.
okay. I don't think it's still available on Amazon. because I think they ran out. But
I'll be back in about an hour.
Okay, I'll do my
So-
best to link it to Sea Venture Press directly, and they can find out
Okay.
about that. But Nina, my dear
or
friend,
I mean, I might.
I just wanted to say, my dear friend, thank you for talking with us today and sharing some of this new work, which will take you so far in opening up the doors again to the many, many dimensions of our existence. This is the work, as it were, we need to do to change our consciousness toward a higher and deeper plane that can drive the changes that we must see, or we're not going to make it. And there are the poets right there, right on the cutting edge of that. I'm not surprised.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks for saying that. Yeah.
Okay, well, you take care, and I hope many people write to you. You'll see again info under the links, ladies and gentlemen, to get in touch to get a copy of this book. And I know it's going to knock your socks off. Nina, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thanks, Jack, for everything.
My pleasure, my friend. See you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.